When Nia's heart was broken, the world expected her to disappear in shame. But instead of begging or crying, she vanished quietly, only to return years later, not as a guest, but as the silent force behind their perfect day. Nia had always trusted Zari. They grew up like sisters, shared secrets, dreams, and even heartbreaks. So when Nia finally found love with Kofi and was about to marry him, Zari stood by her side, smiling, helping, pretending to be happy. But the night before the wedding, something changed. They were alone in Nia's room, going over the last details, when Zari suddenly stared at her with cold eyes and said, "You bring misfortune wherever you go." Nia froze. Her heart dropped. She forced a laugh, thinking maybe it was a joke, but Zari didn't smile. Her words cut deep. Nia didn't sleep that night. Her mind kept repeating that sentence. What did she mean? Why now? The next morning, everything fell apart. Nia woke up to missed calls and messages. Kofi was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. His phone was off. Guests started arriving, but there was no groom. Confused and heartbroken, Nia sat there in her wedding dress, waiting, hoping. But hope turned into shock when she saw a picture posted online that morning. It was Kofi, standing next to Zari, and the caption said, "Fate fixed it." Her own best friend, the one who called her cursed, the one who hugged her just hours before. She didn't just steal her groom, she stabbed her right in the heart. Nia didn't understand what she had done to deserve this. Everyone started talking. Some said it was Nia's fault. Maybe she was unlucky. Maybe something was wrong with her. Nia didn't speak. She couldn't. She had no words left, just silence, pain, and betrayal. That whisper from Zari wasn't random. It was planned. It was the first strike before everything crashed. And from that moment, Nia knew this wasn't just heartbreak. It was war. But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just watched them from a distance and quietly disappeared. No posts, no calls, just silence. Because sometimes the loudest revenge begins with nothing at all. The wedding hall was quiet, too quiet. Decorations hung all around, flowers still fresh, candles still burning, music softly playing in the background. But there was no joy, no dancing, no laughter. And at the front, where two people were supposed to sit side by side as husband and wife, only one chair was taken. Nia sat there alone, still in her wedding dress. Her hands shook as she held the vows she had written for Kofi, words she had poured her heart into, promises of forever. But now, they were just empty lines on a piece of paper. She kept staring at the door, hoping maybe, just maybe, he would walk in and say it was all a mistake. But deep down, she knew. Guests had already left. Some didn't even bother to sit. They just stared at her with pity or confusion before walking out. Not one person came to comfort her. Not one hand reached out to hold hers. Even her own family stayed quiet, embarrassed, unsure what to say. And then, her phone buzzed. A notification from Zari's social media. Curiosity made her check, and what she saw made her heart stop. Zari had posted pictures, her and Kofi, laughing, smiling, holding hands, dressed casually but looking like a couple already married. And the caption, "Fate fixed it." Nia's hands went cold, her face blank. She couldn't cry anymore. There were no more tears left. She just sat there, alone in the hall she had dreamed about since childhood. The same hall where she imagined walking in as a bride, seeing Kofi's smile, starting a new life. But now, it was nothing more than a room filled with broken dreams. Every flower felt like a lie. Every candle flickered like a mocking laugh. She had done everything right, loved deeply, trusted her best friend, believed in her relationship, but all of it meant nothing. Outside, life continued. Cars passed, birds flew. The world didn't pause for her pain, and she realized something in that silence. Zari may have stolen Kofi. She may have tried to ruin her, but this wasn't the end. That table, meant for two, was now empty, but it was also a beginning. A clear message from the universe that this chapter had closed, and something far greater was coming. Zari thought she had won. She thought her caption was the last word. But what she didn't know was that fate wasn't finished. It had just begun rewriting the story, this time for Nia. After the wedding disaster, Nia thought the pain would fade with time, but instead, it grew, not just in her heart, but in the mouths of others. People in her neighborhood began to whisper behind her back. At first, it was small things, strange looks, awkward silences, but then the whispers turned into sharp words. She's cursed, some said. Any man who loves her will leave, or suffer. Others added, her womb is closed, that's why Kofi left. She can't give a man children. It hurt more than she expected. These weren't strangers. These were people she had known for years. Women she had helped during hard times. Men who once praised her for her kindness, but now they crossed the street to avoid her. They stopped greeting her. Children who once played outside her shop were pulled away by their mothers. The worst pain came from her own family. One evening, her aunt, the same woman who raised her after her parents died, sat her down and said coldly, "You are bringing shame to this family. First your groom leaves, now people are laughing at us. Maybe it's true. Maybe something is wrong with you." Nia didn't cry in front of her. She just nodded slowly. That night, she went into her small room, looked around at the life she had built, and felt nothing but heaviness. The dress she had worn for the wedding still hung in the corner, untouched. She folded it gently and placed it in a bag. Then she packed the rest of her things, quietly, with no tears. She didn't leave a note. She didn't say goodbye. Before the sun came up, Nia walked away. She left behind the street where she grew up, the neighbors who now saw her as a curse, and the family that chose shame over support. But she didn't walk away in defeat, number. She walked away with fire in her chest, with silence that screamed louder than any words. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew one thing. She would never return the same. They had planted a curse on her name. They had watered it with gossip and lies. But what they didn't know was that the seed they planted wouldn't grow into weakness. It would grow into strength, into purpose. And one day they would hear her name again, not as a curse, but as a storm. After Nia disappeared, it was like she vanished from the world. No phone calls, no texts, no pictures online. Her social media accounts were gone. Everyone assumed she had gone far away to hide, maybe to start over in a small town where no one knew her name. People stopped talking about her after a while. Life moved on. Zari and Kofi continued posting their perfect pictures online. Their smiles were wide, their captions proud. It looked like they had won. They were invited to events, praised as a beautiful couple, and even announced their upcoming wedding date. Everyone was watching them now. But then something unexpected started to happen. Quietly, slowly, and without warning. It began with whispers. A new investor had entered the wedding business in the city. Not just one venue, but 3. Expensive ones. The kind that rich people booked months in advance. People began asking, who's buying all these places? Where did the money come from? The owners didn't say much, but one thing was clear. The name on the contract for all 3 venues was the same. Miss N. Amari Holdings. It shocked everyone. That name sounded familiar. Too familiar. Nia's full name was Nia Amari, but surely it couldn't be her. Could it? Those who had laughed at her started whispering her name again, quietly, carefully. The girl they once called cursed might now be the woman buying half the city's top wedding venues. Zari and Kofi heard the rumors too. At first, they brushed it off. It's just a coincidence, Kofi said. Someone else with the same name. But deep down, even they felt a chill. There were no photos, no interviews, just paperwork and contracts signed with clean, sharp signatures. The name, Miss N. Amari, kept showing up on more things: floral supply companies, catering businesses, even luxury decor services. Behind the scenes, a quiet power was moving, and people started to notice that almost every big wedding now had something to do with this one name, Miss N. Amari Holdings. Nia had been gone for years, but she wasn't hiding. She was building, growing, becoming someone they never imagined. She didn't come back with noise. She came back with ownership. She didn't post her success. She signed it, and soon, the same people who once whispered lies about her would be standing in halls she now owned. The quiet years weren't quiet at all. They were the years she rebuilt herself, brick by brick, into a woman they would never forget. Zari was on a mission to have the grandest wedding anyone had ever seen. She wanted everything to look like a royal fairy tale. Nothing was ever enough for her. She asked for fresh roses flown in from another country, napkin holders shaped like diamonds, and even a release of white doves the moment she walked down the aisle. She shouted at the planners, changed her mind every second, and acted like she was a queen. She didn't care about the cost. She wanted her wedding to be the talk of the town. The wedding planner smiled and took notes, pretending to be impressed. But deep down, she was tired of Zari's attitude. Every demand was bigger than the last. Every sentence started with, "I want," or "make it better." She behaved like a bridezilla, loud, rude, and impossible to please. But there was one thing Zari didn't know. She wasn't the one paying for it. After every meeting, the planner would excuse herself, step into her office, and make one important phone call. She'd speak with calm respect and say, "Just updating you on the expenses, ma'am. She now wants diamond napkin holders and a dove release. Should we proceed?" And on the other end of the line, a woman's voice would answer softly, "Yes, let her have it all." That voice, it belonged to Nia Amari, now a powerful CEO, silent owner of multiple wedding businesses, and the secret sponsor of this entire wedding. Zari had no idea. She thought Kofi's new job had brought in the money. She thought she had moved on and won. But what she didn't know was that every flower she ordered, every light she demanded, and every luxury item she picked was all coming from Nia's account. Nia never showed her face. She never made a sound, but with every payment approved, she was there, watching quietly, controlling everything behind the scenes. She wasn't just attending the wedding, she was building it, funding it, owning it, and the irony. Zari was planning her dream wedding under the full control of the very woman she once betrayed. Every petal, every sparkle, every second of that wedding was Nia's silent message. "You can wear the crown, Zari, but I built the palace." And soon, the bride who thought she had everything would find out that the woman she called cursed had just made her the star of a show she didn't even realize she was in. Zari walked into the designer's studio like she owned the place. She wanted her wedding dress to be perfect, expensive, and unforgettable. "I want the most unique gown you've ever made," she said. "Something that makes people gasp when I walk in." The designer, a calm older man with sharp eyes, nodded politely. He had seen brides like Zari before, loud, demanding, full of pride. But he didn't say much. Instead, he brought out a beautiful white gown, full of sparkle and grace. As he helped her step into it, he paused for a moment and stared quietly. Zari noticed his silence and asked, "Is something wrong?" He smiled gently and said, No, just remembering someone." She rolled her eyes and continued looking at herself in the mirror, admiring the fit, the glow, the shine. She twirled and asked, "So? How do I look?" The designer smiled again, but this time it was different, a little sad, a little knowing. He looked at her through the mirror and softly said, "You remind me of another bride I once fitted years ago. Same figure, same smile, same light in her eyes." Zari laughed. "Well, she can't be me." He leaned in closer as he adjusted the fabric on her shoulders. "No, she's not, but she was unforgettable. Just like this dress is, because of who's paying for it." Zari blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He straightened up and walked to his desk. "Oh, nothing," he said calmly. "Just that every stitch on this gown is paid for by someone who never forgot how she was treated." Zari raised her eyebrows, a little annoyed. "So, who's paying for it?" The designer didn't answer. He only said, "Let's just say she's someone who doesn't show her face, but her presence is everywhere." Zari didn't understand. Not yet. She brushed it off, thinking it was just a strange comment. She was too focused on her big day to care, but the words stayed with her, deep in the back of her mind. What she didn't realize was that the dress she loved so much was part of a bigger plan. Every bead, every thread, every shine on that fabric wasn't just fashion. It was a reminder from Nia, because this wasn't just a wedding gown. It was a silent warning, a dress built on betrayal, stitched with revenge, and worn by the very woman who had no idea she was part of someone else's story. Zari smiled in the mirror, feeling like a queen. But behind that smile, a truth waited, quiet, strong, and unforgettable. The day before Zari's wedding was meant to be exciting. She had everything planned perfectly. The flowers, the music, the guests, and the gown. Her phone was buzzing with messages, and she was smiling, soaking in all the attention. People were calling her the luckiest bride in town. In the middle of the afternoon, a delivery van pulled up at the front of her house. A man stepped out and handed over a beautiful gift basket. It was wrapped in gold with a white ribbon. Everyone around thought it was from a guest, or maybe from Kofi, her soon-to-be husband. Zari's eyes lit up as she opened it, but her smile faded fast. Inside, There was no fancy gift, no expensive perfume, no sweet letter. Just three things: a small cracked mirror, a wilted white lily, and a note. The mirror was broken down the middle, sharp and jagged. The lily, once a symbol of purity, now drooped, dried and brown. And the note, it was short, written in neat but cold handwriting. Curses don't follow people, Zari. They rise when you betray the wrong ones. Suddenly, the room went silent. Her friends looked at each other, confused. One of them asked, "What does that mean? Is it a joke?" Zari's hands trembled a little as she held the note. She forced a laugh, trying to play it off. Probably someone jealous, maybe an ex-friend. But inside her chest tightened, because she knew that message wasn't from just anyone. It had to be from Nia. The words, the timing, the item, it all pointed back to her. The mirror, a reflection of what Zari had broken. Nia's trust, the wilted lily, the friendship that once bloomed between them, now dead. And the note, a warning, a reminder that what Zari called a win might just be the start of her downfall. That night, Zari couldn't sleep. The note kept flashing in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nia's face. Not angry, not crying, but calm, too calm, like someone who already knew how the story would end. Zari didn't tell Kofi about the delivery. She didn't want him asking questions. She pushed the basket under her bed and told herself to focus on the wedding. After all, the day she had dreamed of was finally here. But deep down, she felt it. Something was off, something was coming, and for the first time in a long time, Zari wasn't sure she was the one in control. The day had finally arrived. Zari stood at the back of the decorated wedding hall, dressed in her shining gown, smiling with pride. Everyone was looking at her. Phones were up, cameras flashing, and guests stood to admire her. Soft music played, and the doors opened. It was her moment, the one she had dreamed of for years. With her bouquet in hand, she began to walk slowly down the aisle. Her smile was wide. Kofi waited at the end, dressed in a fine suit, trying to hold back tears. Zari looked around, soaking in the admiration. This was her fairy tale. But then, something strange happened. The music stopped, completely. Everyone turned their heads, confused. Some guests whispered to each other. The lights in the hall flickered, then slowly dimmed, until the whole room was under a soft, golden glow. The atmosphere changed. It no longer felt like just a wedding. It felt like something big was about to happen. The MC, holding a mic near the front, stepped forward. He cleared his throat and smiled nervously, then spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "before the ceremony continues, we'd like to take a moment to honor someone very special, the true force behind this beautiful event, the one who made this majestic day possible. Please welcome the official sponsor of this wedding, CEO Nia Amari." The room froze. Gasps filled the air. Some guests even dropped their phones in shock. Zari's eyes widened, and her feet stopped moving. Kofi's smile disappeared. From the side of the stage, under the now bright spotlight, a woman in a sleek black dress stepped onto the platform, calm, confident, and powerful. It was Nia. Her face was peaceful. No hate, no sadness, just calm strength. She stood there, letting the silence speak for her. The crowd stared, unable to believe it. The same woman who was once betrayed, humiliated, and forgotten was now standing tall, in control, in power, at the center of their most important day. Zari's hands began to shake. Her mind raced. She couldn't understand. How? Why? When? But it was too late. The truth had already entered the room. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a reveal, a twist no one saw coming. The day Zari thought would be her grand victory had just been flipped into Nia's quiet triumph. And as Nia stood on that stage, saying nothing, yet saying everything, one thing became clear. The one they called cursed was now the queen of the moment. The room was silent. All eyes were still on Nia as she stood on the stage. Zari looked frozen in place, holding her bouquet with shaky hands. Kofi looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The guests waited, unsure of what was going to happen next. Then Nia reached into her purse and pulled out something small and old, a folded piece of paper. It looked slightly worn, like it had been kept safe for a long time. She unfolded it slowly and looked up at the crowd. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. Her voice was steady, calm, and clear. "These were the vows I wrote for my wedding," she said softly. "I never got to say them. Until now." The room held its breath. She began to read. "I promise to love with my whole heart, even when it's been broken. I promise to forgive, even when it's hard. I promise to stay kind, even when others choose cruelty. I promise to believe in myself, even when no one else does. I promise to rise, no matter how many times I fall. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't crack. Every word hit like truth, simple, strong, and full of meaning. Then she looked up from the paper and smiled gently. I wrote these vows for someone else, but with time, I realized they were always meant for me. She paused. The whole hall was still. I never needed a groom to fulfill these promises, she said. I made them to myself, and I've kept everyone. Gasps echoed around the room. Some people clapped softly, others just stared, stunned. Zari's smile had completely faded. Kofi looked like he had just realized what he lost. Nia folded the note and tucked it back into her purse. She didn't yell. She didn't seek revenge with anger. She simply took the moment that was stolen from her and made it hers again. And somehow that hurt more than anything she could have screamed. It wasn't revenge through pain. It was power through peace. She turned slowly, gave one last look at the hall she had paid for, the guests she had gathered, the people who once doubted her. Then she walked off the stage with grace. Because sometimes the loudest message is spoken with the quietest voice. And that day, Nia's voice was the one the world remembered. Nia stepped down from the stage, calm and graceful, as if the moment had never belonged to anyone else but her. She didn't wait for applause. She didn't care for anyone's reaction. She just walked straight down the aisle, alone, proud, and free. People moved out of her way without saying a word. Even the photographers, who had spent the whole day clicking Zari's pictures, turned their cameras toward Nia, capturing every step she took. She didn't glance back, not once. She left before the cake was cut, before the fake smiles could return, before Zari could try to pretend like nothing had happened. Behind her, the silence was heavy. Kofi stood frozen, staring at the floor. His hands were in his pockets, his face pale, like he had finally understood the cost of what he'd done. Zari, still holding her bouquet, couldn't keep it together anymore. She collapsed onto a chair, her face in her hands, too embarrassed to face the guests. The room slowly started to empty. Guests whispered to one another, unsure if they should stay or leave. Some were angry, feeling fooled. Others were simply stunned, watching everything fall apart. Later that night, as the last few people gathered near the reception area, the venue staff began clearing things earlier than planned. Chairs were removed, lights were turned off, and just before midnight, the doors to the grand wedding hall were locked shut. By morning, news had already spread. Blogs posted the story. Social media exploded, and the headlines were brutal. Bride fails to pay. Venue seized by sponsor. CEO Nia Amari leaves. Wedding in style after quiet takeover. People couldn't stop talking. The same ones who once mocked her were now calling her a genius, a queen, a woman who got the last word without raising her voice. As the chaos unfolded back home, Nia was already gone. She didn't wait to see the damage. She didn't post a thing. She simply boarded a plane to Paris that same night. No groom, no guests. Just her, a passport, and a smile. She had booked the honeymoon a year ago, back when she was still supposed to marry Kofi. But now, it was no longer about that. It was about her peace, her joy, her new beginning. She sipped tea by the window seat as the plane took off. The lights of the city faded below her, and in that quiet moment, she didn't feel bitter. She didn't feel broken. She felt free. You believe silence can be stronger than revenge, and growth is the best clapback. Share Nia's story. Let the world know the best revenge is rebuilding louder than the ones who broke you. Please share and subscribe for more African tales.